Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Helen if you don't already know me, and I do fitness and lifestyle videos as well as Gymshark clothing hauls and beauty videos, everything. I do everything. Anyway, today's video is going to be a glute workout, mainly my favourite glute exercises. I have an hour, so I'm going to just go through as much as I possibly can today. It's Saturday, the gym is not too busy, which is good, so we should get a good amount of space and a good amount of footage, hopefully. So I'm going to do a voiceover over the exercises to give you some coaching tips, and if you have any questions, just let me know down below. I'm a personal trainer, so I might not have the most beautiful backside in the whole fitness industry, but I know what I'm talking about. So if you have any questions, please ask. If you are trying to grow your glutes, you do need to ideally be in a calorie surplus or in bulk mode. I am going to be in a deficit post-Christmas, but I'm still going to train with the same exercises so that I maintain as much muscle as possible. Don't become a cardio queen when you want to lose weight, because you won't just lose body fat, you will lose your hard-earned muscle as well. Anyway, that was brief, but basically these are my top exercises, the ones I've been loving at the moment, and let's get into it. So the first thing I wanted to touch on was glute activation. Some people do cardio before their leg workouts, but I find it much more effective to skip the cardio, save it to the end if I have energy, and basically conserve all my energy and use all my focus on activating my glutes instead. So the activation exercises that I've been going to that I think are the most effective are banded side steps, 10 either way, and then a forward and back duck walk, taking this really slowly and focusing more on the standing leg. So not the leg that you are moving, but the stabilizing, the stable leg. So I'm really trying to make sure my knee doesn't cave in and I'm pushing into the band the whole time. The other thing that I've been loving, which is just really simple, is just a banded kickback. This gives you a chance to focus on your hip position even more, about your core, so thinking about keeping your core tight, stomach pulled in so your lower back doesn't start to arch. All the normal things that you would do with a cable kickback, but just a nice light resistance. So as well as kickbacks, also the lateral leg raises or hip abductions as well, also bended. And I've just been doing 10 of each and then repeating both exercises, so just doing 2 sets in total. You have to remember that this is glute activation. You're not trying to burn them out. You don't want to be completely knackered. You do want to feel them. You want to feel super warm, but not at all knackered. My favourite big lift to really target the glutes is a Sumo Deadlift. The variation that I like is one with a pause at the bottom. So I'm elevated on blocks and you can't quite see, but I'm not letting that kettlebell hit the floor. This is the biggest one in the gym. It's a 32. Ideally, I should start using a bar just so I can actually go heavier. So you do want your first and your big lifts to be heavy, but adding that pause at the bottom, it is 3 seconds, really increases the time under tension and therefore the amount of work that your glutes are doing. Now this is a deadlift. It is not a squat. I'm not trying to get my hips down. I'm focusing very much on the hinge pattern, so trying to stretch and open through my glutes, and then I'm pushing into my heels and pushing my knees out, which also helps me feel my glutes, and I'm making sure that I can feel them at the bottom of the movement and that I squeeze them, and that is what completes the movement. So I did 12 reps with a 3-second pause at the bottom of every single rep. From there I went onto a front foot elevated reverse lunge. This is a really good alternative to a step up. When I use a 40 box or a bench, for example, I actually feel like I get a very similar depth, but my balance is quite different. So here I'm more comfortable to get a really good range on every single rep. This is now personal preference, and movement pattern is very, very similar. The focus, of course, is hips going back and then always pushing into your heel, squeezing your glute to tuck your hips back under. My main focuses, and what I tell my clients, is to almost forget that your back leg is doing anything. You want to think that 90 to 95% of your weight is actually in your front foot, and you're allowed to have a forward lean with your torso so that you keep your weight over that front leg. This is going to stop you pushing off of your other leg, so it's going to just help to isolate that supporting, stabilizing, working leg even more. It isn't an isolation exercise, it is going to use the whole of that working leg. But if you focus on a pendulum type movement in your hips, driving into your heel and squeezing your glutes from the bottom of your movement, then you can make it more of a hip dominant exercise. I did 12 reps each side, and I did it as a superset. You don't have to, you can go heavier and just rest in between, but I was trying to save time, so I supersetted. I don't think a glute workout is complete without some kind of hip thrust or glute bridge. This is a very lazy way of setting up one of those too. So there is normally a bench underneath the Smith machine, and using a Smith machine is different to doing a bridge on the floor because the plates can come lower. So if you were to do a bridge on the floor, obviously the size of the plates means that there wouldn't be any tension in your glutes at the bottom of the movement. However, I do find that from looking at it, I don't get a very good range of motion, but it's really easy to set up. And at the time, I could really feel this. And I've done this the last few weeks as my alternative to a hip thrust. Again, I just think if you're setting up lots of equipment, it can take time, but this is really worth trying. See how you like it. I'm in quite a narrow stance with my feet, but I do actually quite like that. I feel I could feel my glutes a lot, and I'm doing what I said in the previous couple of exercises, which is making sure I can feel my glutes at the bottom or at the stretched position of the exercise, so that the initiation and the movement starts from my glutes. I'm trying to make it as hip dominant as possible, and especially on these I'm just making sure my core is really tight and that I'm not using my lower back to lift that weight up, so going for an anterior pelvic tilt as much as possible. Single leg exercises are really, really good on your lower body days, and especially your glute days, because your glutes do so much work in stabilizing. I love single leg presses, and I will tend to do one on every single day depending on what the previous exercises were. So most of those exercises, in fact all of them, were performed in one plane of motion. They were all in plane, everything was in front of me or behind me. There was no sideways or lateral movement. So that's why I decided to go for a side leg press. This means that I'm starting to work my abductors slightly more than I was in the previous exercises. So here I'm going as heavy as I can, as low as I can. I'm, as always, making sure there's lots of torque in my hips and my knees aren't collapsing and they're not falling in. I believe I did 12 reps, and with this exercise I find it easy to not superset, to just go one side into the other side, nice and slow, nice and deep, and always 10 to 12 reps as heavy as possible on each side. The leg press can be hard to get comfortable on, so I tend to take my shoulders completely off the seat when I go sideways. So push your hips slightly back and then lean your shoulders slightly forwards, and it just means that you won't feel crushed on the seat. Next up I have a superset. This is starting with a hip hinge motion again, so just what the glutes do best. This is a Romanian deadlift. Again, I'm thinking pendulum movement, weight in my heels, getting as much stretch as possible and initiating the lift at the most stretched position. So seeing if I can find my contraction at the back, squeezing and then coming up to top. with your Romanian deadlifts, you need your core tight, your back to be super, super flat. I'm kind of tucking my chin in so that my neck isn't jarred. Most people tend to look up, but you are so much better to look down instead, as long as your shoulders are back, of course. But you'll get a good stretch in your hamstrings and glutes, and I'm still focusing on glutes to do my lift. Then the superset is a lying hamstring curl. I've almost gone slightly too light. No, that's not true. So by the end, it really hurt, which is fantastic. That's where you want to be. But it's not too heavy that my hips are rocking all over the place. I'm still keep making an effort to keep my core tight and my hips quite still, so that I'm using my hamstrings to curl the weight up rather than arching through my lower back. But this is a really good superset. I recommend trying it. So the deadlift is more of a compound exercise, and then when you're coming here, you're isolating your hamstrings. So I focus on my glutes for my deadlift, and then on my hamstrings for the lying leg curl. The final exercise for this video is on the hip abduction machine. All of these clips have been in real time, but I just want to point out that this one is also. I am really not swinging the weight. I'm focusing on pushing that weight out with my glutes, and I'm sat up and leaning slightly backwards. Now I'm letting my hips go into a posterior pelvic tilt, and then when I push my knees out, I'm tucking them under as much as I can. So I'm really squeezing, doing a thrust motion, and doing 10 in that position, then coming up into a vertical position, doing a further 10, and then doing a final 10 leaning forwards. And just changing the angle of your torso means that you're also going to change the line of force that you're putting through your glute muscles. So therefore, just slightly targeting or accentuating different parts of your glutes. I finish with leaning forwards because I find it the easiest, but also because you're knackered by this point, so you kind of need the easy one last. And you can tell I am swinging a little bit, but it is still slow and squeezy, and this works as a good burnout. I've just finished filming, and I didn't film quite as many exercises as I wanted to. I would have added, well, probably only kickbacks at the end or side leg raises. But one of the reasons that I didn't film as much is just because I was chatting to one of the girls who was training, one of the members called Sarah, and we were just talking actually about training glutes and following girls on Instagram and trying people's exercises and whatnot. She was saying that she follows a girl who definitely has implants, so it's weird how like I unfollow people with bum implants, because obviously I'm never going to have a bum like theirs unless I pay for it. Like, I can't get that from the gym. But follow who you want to follow. It doesn't mean that the information that they're putting out is wrong. I just personally don't find it motivating, if that makes sense. And then the other thing we were saying is, so a lot of people, when they do a leg press to feel it in their glutes a lot, they go wider. I actually find when I take my feet narrow, I really feel my glutes a lot. So we were saying that you just have to take inspiration from exercises and mostly just find what works best for you. So whether that's slightly changing your foot position, slightly tilting your hips further one way than the other, or putting your weight even further back in your heels, or I don't know, having your toes raised, whatever helps you feel it the most, and that is super important. But I hope this video was helpful, and I'll see you in my next one, which will probably be something Christmassy. Yay. So yes, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Stay happy and healthy. Bye.